Welcome to Generations, where we talk about life with video games and how these video games influence our lives. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. We have a really special episode today because this is episode number 1. Yeah! And we are surrounded by your favorite gamers, your favorite hosts. One of them just so happens to be me. My name is Frog. The other is Mr. Adaminsky, Gettin17, and Bigcat. We're going to talk and explore the essence of what this show is and what this show is about. And Bigcat is going to kick us off with talking all about play therapy. So, Michael, get us started.
So, play therapy is defined from the Association for Play Therapy. It is defined as through play therapy, children learn to communicate with others, express feelings, modify behavior, develop problem-solving skills, and learn a variety of ways of relating to others. Play provides a safe psychological distance from their problems and allows expression of thoughts and feelings appropriate to their development. Some of the actual disorders that it can treat for children: anxiety, obsessive, compulsive, depressive, neurodevelopmental, disruptive impulse and conduct, trauma and stress related disorders, developmental, academic, language, and social issues, physical and learning disabilities, and of course, grief and loss, divorce, and family dissolution. So the way that I use it is play is a child's language. It's their words. So I utilize it in a way to really allow them the space to kind of express themselves freely, because they don't really have the emotional vocabulary just yet to be able to explain how they're feeling. And so you kind of move along with them, and depending on the age, generally you can do 3 to 12 years old with play therapy. They're younger, you kind of just go along and reflect what they're doing, but you don't label anything. Because when you label, you can really pull them out of the unconscious. So as you're moving along with some of the 12-year-olds, you can be a little more directive. So you can give them kind of like direct teaching skills, or ask them, specific tasks. Tell me how this feels, and then be able to work with them. The biggest important thing is that play for everyone is fun. It's enjoyable, elevates our spirits, and just brightens everyone's outlook on life. A lot of great definitions based off of play on the Association for Play Therapy website. So I got the idea of being able to utilize technology from the experiences I had growing up with you guys, where I didn't know anything that was going on within the game. So it was like, wow, you did that, or hey, you move that there. And that's a lot of the things that you do with children to really keep them in the moment that they are when they're expressing. So that's a lot of the ways that I used being able to bring in technology. 1, because it's their language. 2, it's even more becoming their language now with play. Every child now has some exposure to technology. So it's been a seamless transition.
Okay, that was great. So everybody here can relate to what he said in some type of way, like how even at a younger age, we were able to have these games be a big part of our lives, and how we become therapeutic through gaming and also relate and connect with other people on gaming. So at this point,
interesting too is we didn't know that when we were kids, though.
It is true.
Well, like, we had no idea. I mean, we were just having fun and playing that kind of stuff and getting together and playing all that stuff and figuring it out. And we had no idea that it could have been what Michael's doing now.
Isn't that a trip?
And so like hearing you talk about that, Michael, is like really interesting. I'm just like recalling like back in the day playing and stuff like that on like Super Nintendo and Nintendo 64 and all that stuff. And it's just like, So I kind of like, I'm trying to recall some of those moments that I could, it just makes me happy thinking about it, really, it's cool.
And some of that stuff you can kind of relate with life now. some things that we need to work on for ourselves. And play therapy is a really good way to, understand ourselves and be okay, be happier with ourselves.
Yeah, we'll have to. I want to talk about more offline with Michael about like impulse control, because my kids, I think, kind of have that, and I have that too, especially in our family. I think it's a big deal. Impulse control. If you haven't noticed that, Michael.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, impulse control is very common, especially just with children, with adults, and there's all different kinds of, that's why I just love about games in general, when you think about just impulse, a lot of it has to do with like focus, with task based, with attention. And I mean, when we just break things down like that, I mean, that's every game in a nutshell, right?
What games would you use for impulse control though?
For impulse control, it's actually really interesting. I mean, there's a lot of research that really shows actually that first person shooters are actually really good on impulse control. The classic example I always think of that makes me laugh is, you remember the movie Men in Black, where like Will Smith is doing his training and he's kind of like shooting certain things, and Tommy Lee Jones is like, "What? Why didn't you do that?" And he just kind of starts breaking it down. It's kind of like that, you're trying to train your brain to get to like where you have to sit on the impulse of not actually like shooting something that is good, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's really like that's one of my favorite scenes from that movie, actually.
Yeah,
that's cool. What else?
So definitely the first person shooters. I actually really like Fruit Ninja is something that I really love. It's the mobile game. They've now moved it to the Oculus Quest, where it's kind of like the fruit is popping up. You have two samurai swords in your hands, and you get to just kind of slice through all the fruit. It's really easy. But as you move through each of the difficulties, now all of a sudden, like a bomb flies up between all the pineapples that you have to slice. So you really have to like train your brain to kind of come up with these strategies in which you're not actually going to hit the bomb. So you kind of have to sit on that impulse, like, oh, I really want to slice through all 10 of that fruit right there. That's going to be a huge combo. But there's like a huge bomb sitting in the middle of it.
That's cool. I think you talked about like Splatoon 2. What was that? How would you do that in regards to impulse control?
Yeah, I think with Splatoon, it's just having to learn when you think of task based. So if with Splatoon, how they have like the monsters who have kind of like their shields up, and naturally, you want to just jump in and there's like 6 of them. You want to take them all out, spray your paint everywhere, take them out. But if they have the shield up, you really have to learn to kind of sit on that impulse of wanting to do that, because you have to wait for the perfect moment, slide around to the perfect opportunity to pop up behind them and really be able to take them out where the shield isn't there. Okay. So the impulse control, it can really be trained with just gaming in general. It can really help with just training the brain, the neuroplasticity and everything.
Man, that's really cool.
It's just things you wouldn't think of, so that's what makes it amazing.
Yeah.
So with kids with like ADHD or kids that can't focus, when they're playing these games, how do you see their progression?
Yeah, it's actually interesting. I believe it or not, like whenever I play a game, I always find something. It's like, wow, that's really cool. I didn't really think that we could use it, in that kind of different lens, so to speak. And one of the ones I'm sure you are all very familiar with is Super Mario Odyssey on the Switch.
Yeah.
The beginning of that game, how when you choose the assist mode, right? And so the assist mode is kind of like the tutorial where it kind of goes through, teaches you how to throw like his hat. How do you manipulate your hands to do certain throws and everything? That in itself is like a measurable attention assessment. You really get to measure how much the child can kind of follow the instructions. How much do they kind of taper off and go somewhere else because they can't, their impulsivity is kind of all over the place, and their attention and their focus. So you can kind of measure all that, and then you can kind of move in through task related games where it's like time based, and you can kind of see, how long does it take them to complete a task, and you kind of just keep conditioning. It's kind of like repetition, so to speak, to be able to train their brain.
Is that the data you're collecting? The measurement for that is the time it takes for them to figure out how to make that throw with the hat, or what is the significance of the measurement? What exactly is the measurement?
Yeah, like being able to, so when I use one, like just task-based in general games, so like we all know, and you think of like Super Mario World 3D, the one that was on the Wii U. I may be drawing a blank on the name, but basically how, you know, how games have like where it moves along. So it's kind of like, you know, if you stay and you're stuck behind on the left, you know, you basically will get, you know, trunched or run over. So you can really kind of track how well they can focus through all the different obstacles. And then if they can't figure it out and they just shut down, then they'll die, right? They'll get like kind of left behind, so to speak.
Yeah. Yep.
And so you can measure all that progress, you know, like how far did they make it through the level on the first try?
I see.
Yeah. And then you give them a little bit of an instruction, you know, hey, maybe you want to try, you know, jumping at this moment or wait for this, and then see if they can, you know, get past it on the next one. So you could just kind of measure all of that.
That's cool. That's cool. I track a lot of data sometimes in my work, but it's like, do you have like charts on this kind of stuff, or like, you know what I mean? Are you presenting this kind of data, or like?
I haven't like started writing down actual, like putting it into like charts and stuff. It's more of just kind of like my own, you know, mental note as I'm like in a session, so to speak. But definitely would love to start putting that kind of data down to have more of like a concrete evidence, so to speak, to show people.
Yeah. Cool.
So quick question. Is this for teens with developmental issues, or do you accept kids with behavioral issues as well?
You mean like, give me like an example. Would you say like, you know, children who struggle with like anger outbursts, like meltdowns, things like that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So the typical game that I use to explain anger management is Smash Brothers. So I want to relate it in a language where they'll understand it, because then they'll make the connections. You know, if I just sit here and give them a list on like, hey, you know, when you're upset, you know, try and do your deep breathing, you know, go through all of that, they probably likely won't remember. But we can tie the deep breathing and the coping skills to different gaming language. So with Super Smash Brothers, you know, the more we get hit, the higher our percentage raises. When we hit 300%, the next tap, even if it's not a full hit, knocks us off the screen. It's the same exact thing that we do with our anger, right? Anger builds up, and when we repress it and we don't process it in the moment or utilize our coping skills, it builds up, and one smallest tap, you know, like maybe you drop something and you just lose it, you know, you go off the handle. It's because of all of that anger that is built up inside of you. You're now hitting your 300%. One small tap is now making you fly off the screen. So it's kind of helping them, you know, be able to make those connections. Like, how do you get your percentage down? You know, Smash Brothers, you eat the fruit, it lowers it, but you can equate eating the fruit to like a coping skill, you know, whether it's like reading a book, listening to music, petting your dog, going outside, you know, whatever people want to do to help kind of de-escalate themselves.
That's so funny because I'm always at 300%.
You're always just, yeah, I was going to say, I need to start playing Smash Brothers again, man.
So how do you tackle those parents or people that view video games as a waste of time? Because they're saying now that video games can be an addiction, or it can lead to kids being more violent, but you're using video games to help and be more therapeutic for these kids. So what do you say to those people that disagree?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, definitely, I love, you know, I definitely get clients all the time where parents initially say, I use a lot of technological interventions. And I'm like, really? That's kind of the issue. And it's like, okay, well, great. Then we have something we can work on, you know, because sometimes people bring their kids to therapy and they can't identify goals that they want through the process. And so for us, it's like, okay, great. I have something I can work on. But what I always tell them too in that first session is, you know, too much of anything, whether it's good or bad, is not good for us, right? Like if I go work out for 8 hours, like I'm going to tear all my muscles, you know, probably not the smartest idea. So you really want to preach that balance. The second thing I like to really help them understand is that it's not so much that they're addicted to the actual game or the screen themselves, but it's what are they getting from playing that they're not getting elsewhere in their life. So like they're getting their needs met by playing that they're not getting elsewhere, right? Because in a typical kind of child development attachment that we say, a healthy attachment between a parent and a child is that when you come home and they're excited to see you, they would realistically put down, you know, the iPad or the screen and want to come play with you because they see you as someone who's helping their needs being met. So the other thing that I never really considered, but it became just a kind of like a behavior modification thing is when I sit there and play with them for 50 minutes and then it's like, okay, it's time to go, people have now started to notice that it's easier for them to get off of the screen at home because they're, having that kind of positive, corrective, emotional experience of being able to get off of the actual screen within a safe environment and not having like a big argument or negative interaction, so to speak.
Every parent should know that. Get your kids to play more games.
Or play together.
Or play together,
Yeah.
I'm glad to see a lot of parents embracing video games, especially video games as therapy now, because when I was growing up, my parents pretty much viewed video games as a waste of time. So that's where a lot of conflict in our relationship came in, simply because my parents wanted me to be more involved into sports, but video games were my sport. And I would enjoy coming home and being able to just get lost in a world without having to worry about what I went through around school and everything. So I think with the whole video game aspects and my relationship with my parents and everything, that kind of affected us, because that's something that I enjoyed. And video games is something that a lot of kids and even a lot of adults enjoy. And now at this point, it's great therapy, and it's a great way of pretty much decompressing from your day. So I'm glad you used the analogy for Smash Brothers, and that's a great way of pretty much presenting it to people. Every tap you take, you get to that 300%. That one light tap, you're going to fly off the handle. So that could be used with adults as well. When we're in our relationships, or whether at work, or at home with kids, because we all know kids are bad as hell sometimes. So the great thing about that is now I understand that, and I understand myself a little bit more with that analogy, and I'm glad that you used it.
The hard part is, kind of hearing that is like, one, it sounds like your parents weren't really understanding your world. And I think that's part for parents, is like they don't understand what, children are getting from the game. And so I always say it's not the actual idea of, turning off the game or not playing the game. It's like, what is the underlying emotion? And so it's like, especially if they're playing online with friends and then you tell them to get off, and then because they have a lack of emotional kind of, vocabulary, they just have a meltdown. And it's just like, well, why are they meltdown over something as simple as this? I just told them to get off. But it's like that feeling of like, you just worked so hard to get somewhere and it was just taken away from you. If you're playing with friends and you just turn it off, like now you've just let your friends down, so you're going to feel like, oh, great, I'm going to hear about that later tomorrow. In the context of kind of like what Matt was saying, it's always fascinating because it's like, if you think of the idea that if it wasn't like a video game, like let's say Matt was saying like, hey, I'm going to coping skills class, or I'm going to self-esteem class, like would his parents really have had a different kind of view on that? Is it the idea of, oh, it's just video game? And so that kind of leads to the whole, is it just that it's too stigmatized? If we maybe phrased it in a different way, would people be more open to it?
The great thing about gaming now is parents can actually look at a game and say, holy crap, look at the graphics, look at the realism. Or they can sit there and watch their kids play and go through the story, and it's kind of like a movie with them. So that's the great thing now. Like, for example, my mom, she didn't really get into video games until like the DS and the Wii. So when I was an adult, that's when the Wii came out, and she would love to play Wii Sports, where everybody purchased a Wii specifically for Wii Sports, whether you were a child, whether you were an adult, teenager, even like grandparents. So that's the cool thing. Even my mom, she kind of turned around from me, growing up and her hating video games. Now she enjoys it. She had 2 or 3 3DS, or not 3DSs, but 2 or 3 DSs. And she played all the brain games. She played a lot of those games that you played with the stylus pen. And not so much for my dad, simply because I give him a pass because he is from a different country. So they didn't really embrace the gaming technology like we do in the West, or even in the far, far East when it comes to like Japan and everything. So I think it's great seeing parents embracing the video games and actually enjoying it with their kids. And I think that's a great bonding moment. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And then it just reinforces the idea that you feel like your world doesn't matter or you're not heard. So you kind of, internalize like, wow, maybe I'm not important.
I mean, we did sports and video games, but as far as it impacting my life, it wasn't a negative thing with our parents or nothing like that. But I think video games made me more cocky, I think at times, and it maybe more. Now you mentioned first person shooters. I think I'm like all of us now are probably like really can probably be more focused on things. Even like physical games like pool or like what is that, cornhole and all those other games and darts. And like we're all of us. I'm assuming we're all good at those games as well. I think that impacted some of that. I mean, it's always been a positive thing for me. I don't know. I guess I've had a pretty good time with video games. I guess it's always been pretty positive with me.
Yeah, like when we were growing up, it was kind of cool to have that option there, but it was more of a social thing, more like a in-home competition, and then there was life outside.
Yeah, I would say it made us more competitive for sure. But then we were always. I feel I'm timid with that stuff too, even though I'm competitive with things, but I could still help people out, like if like, oh, that's to do an uppercut, it's down, forward, down and forward again, and then punch. Or you could do it with a light punch and it's quicker or something like that, teaching people that, but then still go back and beat them.
And then feel good about it.
Make sure that I'm like, look, I'm still better than you. Don't forget that. But
yeah, I remember doing that with Daniel.
So that kind of stuff always made me feel good. And I think it kind of translated to my work life as well. Because, I'm not the best at what I do, but I feel like I'm pretty good at it. And I learn from like really good people. But, I know that I have that certain skill set. When you're ready, I'll show you that stuff. You'll get to that level eventually, but I'll still be better. I'll still be better than you.
Still always got to kick your butt.
There's always gonna be somebody better than you, like no matter what. But you can't really think that way. But you can't think that in a negative way, I would say.
Yeah, it's funny too. I think for the most part, as our going through childhood and towards adulthood, I've always been better than you at Street Fighter in some type of like a little bit better. You would win, I would win, but most of the time I probably win. Nowadays, you destroy me. That I can't even keep up. It's like playing Matt. It's just pointless now. There's no point to play Adam or Matt.
I don't get how that happened really, but
I don't know, man. All of a sudden you just got better than me.
When Street Fighter first came out on Switch, I was just like, I got addicted to it, dude. I played like 70 hours or 60 hours or something like that. All just Feilong the whole time.
Yeah.
I was like in the top 20 at one point when you check stats. I haven't checked it in a long time, but like,
you should go back and look.
I don't know how that happened, dude. Yeah, you were always better than me at that stuff. And then you're pretty much better than me at everything as far as video games go.
Not everything.
The only thing I would say like first person shooters, I was always probably a little bit better than you.
Yeah. Yeah. First person shooters, you're better at that for sure than me. Like Call of Duty and Gears and what was that, Halo?
Yeah, all that stuff.
What about GoldenEye?
GoldenEye, back
50-50?
then, probably it might have been 50-50. Yeah, back then. I think we were like both of us were for sure like the best at it out of all of our friends and all that for sure. Back then.
We let them know too.
But then,
So if y'all don't know, I'm a huge wrestling fan, especially back in the day. So my brother, myself, his friend, pretty much our little crew, we would always play wrestling games. So when WWF No Mercy came out for Nintendo 64, that was all we played. Even like with the other wrestling games coming out, like Day of Reckoning, SmackDown, Here Comes the Pain, SmackDown versus Raw. We literally played for hours upon hours with those games. And that's the great thing about couch co-op is because you can pretty much look at each other's faces when you're pretty much dominating, which I did most of the time anyway. Then once Tekken 5 came out, that's when we kind of switched over to like the major fighting games because, even though I played and loved Tekken from the previous series, I never really had a crew to sit there and play and like have that level of competition. And this is before online. So we didn't have that luxury of just connecting to a match online. So it was pretty cool. And even the nights that Jason, and Adam and myself would play Street Fighter, that was cool. And I would win all the time, of course.
Hell yeah, I remember all those nights.
Mm-hmm.
All those nights and days were so fun with your friends.
One thing I was going to ask you is the dynamics that you guys have is pretty different than like Matt. I was going to ask if you guys felt there was any difference in the relationship with your dad as opposed to your mom, because your dad played games with you, and your mom didn't really. So I was wondering if you guys found any differences with that.
That's a good question. My mom, I remember her walking by and saying, in the Super Nintendo days, she's like, "Oh, wow, look at those. Wow, that looks great. Look at those graphics on that." She responded in that way. I remember that. But for the most part, she didn't care. I think she thought all that stuff was cool. We weren't addicted, or we weren't using it as in too much of an escape and things like that. I think she just thought it was cool.
Yeah, Phil, dad was pretty accepting to it too, because he liked playing with us. And I felt that we connected with him on that type of level, but not any other level, because he was pretty much angry all the time. So games was a good way for us to not be on his bad side.
Yeah. I remember getting the original Nintendo, and him playing a lot, and then we took over all that stuff for a long time.
Yeah, it was rightfully ours.
He stopped playing with us for a long time until we became teenagers, and that's when he started getting into EverQuest with you guys.
Well, GoldenEye. He was actually really good at GoldenEye.
Huh? He was started playing that, huh? That's true.
Yeah.
He was playing some other. I remember him trying to play Ocarina of Time too. Okay, that brings me back now. I remember him trying to play those games too. Oh yeah, that is true, huh? He was in and out of playing with us. So yeah, he did it a lot.
Yeah. No, but Dad he was great playing games, man. I wish he would play with us more. And it was so fun to play EverQuest with him, Michael, Jonathan. Had a little crew going. We talk about it. We do bad things when he was sleeping, but he wanted to come out and see what we were doing on EverQuest so bad. He still mentions EverQuest. He's like, "Hey, you playing EverQuest with Michael?" I'm like, "Nah, we don't do that anymore. We do fun stuff like make podcasts."
He just plays Destiny too, and channels out. And he said he wanted to try Skyrim again or something like that, but he just wants to play Destiny too, man.
That's because the great thing about just games in general is that you can really get your frustration out without actually causing physical harm to anything around you in your environment. That's why some of the VR games they have. Rec Room. Sometimes kids just have such a rigid life where they really can't have fun. Everything's so structured that they just need to go into a VR Rec Room and just destroy everything and feel better.
Yeah.
Do they have an adult version with alcohol?
Yeah.
I'm sure we could find one.
Matt, is that why you like fighting games so much? Because you can just beat the crap out of somebody?
Yeah. It helps a lot, and I would say so.
That solves all your problems right there.
Yeah.
So, Michael, what do you think about just the differences between Adam and I's experiences compared to Matt's?
I felt like your parents are definitely, more open. And so, in a lot of ways, you guys felt like there were maybe connections or ways to be able to, have conversations with your parents. Basically, kind of like you guys had a little more of your positive interactions. I wonder how much the relationship would have been different for Matt had he been in that same experience that you guys had.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Michael, your mom and dad they didn't really care about it too much, right? They let you guys play and stuff. How do they feel about it?
Yeah, it was interesting. I remember having a conversation with my dad about this not too long ago. And, I always said man, it would have been really cool. If we were able to play something, we always had our physical sport, kind of, I think a little bit like what Matt had. But my dad, he told me something that was very profound. I never really thought of it. And so it was really nice to hear. But he was just I wanted to learn how to play with you guys, but I didn't feel like I was competent enough. I felt like I would be holding you guys back, which I think is very true with parents. When you think parents don't want to play games with kids because as adults, when we can't beat something, like we beat ourselves up, we feel like we're less than, like, wow, my kid can do this and I can't. And so naturally that comes off as like very controlling, or because that anxiety inside of us, or it's just like, oh, well, this game sucks, this game's stupid, but I was really kind of surprised when he told me that.
Interesting. Yeah, it's probably like the that age range too, baby boomer range. They're our parents' age, especially. They probably, because they saw, that's most of the parents that saw their kids play video games.
Yeah, definitely a culture shock.
And yeah, they probably, I bet you a lot of them, like your dad, probably didn't. They probably felt the same way. They just didn't want to admit it,
Yep, so true.
So they just were like, nah, it's okay. Nah, just go ahead and play. Just do it.
Yep.
Speaking of that, Matt, is your dad more in tune with like technology and games nowadays? Is he kind of accepting?
No, not really. Not really with video games, but as far as like technology, he had to adapt because I had to force him to adapt pretty much. My dad is Nigerian, and with Nigerians, if it doesn't make sense to them, they're not going to buy into it. So I literally had to break everything down on how it's going to benefit. So for an example, when I was in high school, I had to convince him to get Wi-Fi. Like, hey, this is why we need a Wi-Fi. This is going to benefit us because with Wi-Fi. And that's how it started for me. And I guess I should thank him because it helped me in my career in being able to convince people to do stuff they don't want to do. So I should thank him. Thank you, Dad. But he did adapt a little bit when it came to like technology. So for example, he had a Razr phone. I had to literally say, hey, you need a smartphone because with the type of business that you have, you're going to need to be able to open up your emails. You need to be able to GPS. You're going to need to be able to go to web or different web pages to help your business. So I literally had to buy his very first smartphone, which was an iPhone 4. Then he wore that thing out because he used it every damn day. So then I got him the Galaxy S6 now, and he's wearing that thing down. So he will adapt because now he understands the benefits of particular technologies.
This is why you'll benefit from Wi-Fi. This is why everybody else is getting Wi-Fi. So Michael, you want to just kind of close this out on play therapies? Who knows about that? Nobody does. And I think already by what Michael has said, not only helped Adam and Matt with their family lives, but also made me think about things too. That's invaluable to have that information, to have that knowledge. So I think a little bit more about play therapy and we'll be good from there.
It makes my work really fun and easy too. I don't have to sit there and have a huge conversation with a kid. We just put on a game and start playing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I definitely think the overall message that everyone seems to have is that gaming was a huge integral part of growing up for them, whether it was like emotional, whether it was through behavioral, whether it was an escape. I feel like it all played an important role into what we needed at that time in our life, but also positive memories that we created, or even, some of the negative memories at the time, but we can look back and laugh at. And the most important thing, which is looking at mental health in general, is I always say education, awareness, and reflection. Being able to stop in a moment and be like, wow, you know what? Why do I feel this way right now? It's like, oh, okay. Hey, you know what? This reminds me so much of X, Y, and Z in my own past. Just that emotional awareness for ourselves can really help de-escalate when we're feeling, frustrated or upset in the moment. And it's always fascinating to hear everyone's different experiences through gaming, through their upbringing, but there's always one constant, and that's that we've all enjoyed gaming at some point in our life. More specifically related to play therapy, we've all enjoyed positive aspects of play. And a lot of people will tell you that one of the biggest aspects of play therapy is the positive emotions that you experience through play. And so I think that for us caps this episode to be able to move forward. And thank you for listening. We all do appreciate it, and have a good night.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys. See you later.
Good night. All right. Does anybody want to have any witty comment at the end that makes it like punch.
Shots fired.
Good job, Michael.
Should have that as a clip. Save
totally.
Save them, and just like hit that button every once in a while.
Yeah, like when someone says something like a zinger, like shots fired. All right, everybody say goodbye.
Goodbye. See you later.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll catch you later. We'll see you in another episode, and we're the Generations Life of Video Games podcasters. Thank you.